when people explain things, they usually explain it from their own experiences. It's actually quite rare to find someone that can think of it outside of themselves and, think of it in an objective way. That's actually quite a rare thing to find because whether people are doing it consciously or subconsciously, they are, I think most of the time it's subconscious. They are looking at particular scenarios, circumstances, making evaluations based off their experience, which is absolutely fine and that's completely fine. That's how that's how it is. That's just, a biological thing, right? But all I was saying is that it's rare to find someone that is able to actually think outside of themselves and look at it objectively, you know? And this ties into, what I was thinking about the other day about political parties, there's two political parties, and, one side is this side, one side is that side. And in the first world in the West, that's how it usually operates. And I'm not too sure about the third world, but in the first world in the West, like there's two political parties and, they both have, certain things that they campaign about. And since I was young, I always knew that, they're both on the same side, they're both just playing people, and this is something that I always knew since I was young, because at the end of the day, like politicians have a lot of power. I agree, and however, the only thing is though, the lobbyists behind them, they're kind of like the power behind the power, the transatlantic capital that funds their campaigns, that does their lobbying. These people are, in fact, the ones that are really in power because they're the ones that decide the policies in rooms that are very silent, very hush hush. And most of the time, these donations are made through a series of shell companies or like some kind of foundation or some kind of, organization. And the money is very hard to trace, you know, and and that's how they want to be quiet. They don't want to be known, these people, right? Because they learned that silence is one of their best superpowers, you know. And what I'm starting to realize more and more is that, as things become more political and things become more charged, is that I feel like, it's just going to be more and more of, the same merry-go-round, And, I'm not talking about ideologies here. Like, obviously, people on the left or the right, people on the right or the left, I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about their ideologies, Like, obviously, their ideologies are just ideologies. I'm talking about the actual political parties that say they represent those ideologies, right? But in reality, they only represent the interests of the lobbyists. And these lobbyists, these guys don't give a shit about none of that. They only care about their ROI, and whatever it takes to increase their ROI, that is what is going to be implemented in policy. And that's reasonable. I mean, everyone is driven by their own self-interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying this is what it is, And this is I'm not saying this is wrong or right, I'm just a philosopher. I'm just here to say my philosophies, and that's it. I'm not really here to tell people, because people hate talking about morality. I get it, because like in this world, if you want to get to some places, sometimes you have to operate in like in an amoral way, and I'm not saying that I'm doing that. I'm just making an observation, and at the end of the day, I'm not here to like tell people like whether to be good or evil. I mean, that's your choice. That's your choice. Whatever you want to do with that, it's up to you. That's not me. I'm just a philosopher here, and I'm just observing, and I'm gonna do my own thing. So, but to go back to that point that I was making, in terms of the whole political parties and all this stuff like that, if those two parties were to realize what was happening to them, that would be interesting. If they were able to sort of, hey, wait a minute, man, what's going on here? Wait, why are we pitted against each other? What's going on here? For some reason, we seem to be pitted against each other while transatlantic capital ROI continues to increase. So it's like, but then again, like it just is what it is, man. I don't really blame these people at this point, like because it's like I mean, if the people put up a good fight, then of course I'll be like, okay, fair enough, people are good up, but people don't really care about this stuff, so I don't really blame these people for taking advantage, because like at the end of the day, like what people don't even put up a fight for this stuff. No one seems to care about any of this stuff. So I guess it is what it is, And yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in like what's really going on, the mechanisms behind the show, the screenplay. Remembering that human nature is fundamental in every aspect of life. We have systems in place, but systems and ideologies oftentimes cannot override human nature. Well, they can, but not to an extent, because human nature is going to be something that is fundamental in whatever system, whatever ideology that you implement. You see? So I just wanted to come in here and talk about those things. You really question these things, man. Like question. Like I'm always questioning my own beliefs. I'm always questioning my own people. Like I'm questioning everything around me. I'm hypercritical of myself, and I extrapolate that all around me. And when it comes to my own people, like I just want to see my people doing all right. Like there was this guy called Julian Brown. He made it was really nice. I mean, I want my people to be more interested in philosophy and the sciences. People say all this stuff. I want them to be interested in that. I want them to be more focused on sciences and philosophy and doing all this cool stuff. Like the Julian Brown guy, he turned plastic waste into fuel. Like that's incredible. And I looked at him, I was like, wow, this guy is really really making moves, and it's really nice to see that. It gave me some hope. And I really want my people to focus on these things, becoming more scientific in their way of thinking, having ideologies like that are cool, and philosophy, and just really elevating their modality of thinking, and I think that's what I really always wanted for my people, just to improve their way of thinking, right? Because that would be beneficial for them, of course, right? And yeah, I mean, it's all I can say is, man, we're in for one interesting times. We're in for an interesting ride. So grab your popcorn and enjoy the show, because the show's just begun. Okay, it's about to get more and more interesting. You're gonna see things that maybe you've only seen in movies before. That will be appearing before your very eyes. So get ready, enjoy the show, prepare yourself mentally. It's gonna be a rocky ride, but enjoy yourself. And spend time doing the things that you enjoy. And yeah, live your movie. And don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to explore as well. Don't be afraid to start new things. Go full steam ahead. Whatever you do it with everything you got. Put 100% of your soul, your body, everything. Carry your philosophy with you in everything that you do, and really make the most of what you see in this three-dimensional reality. You see, and don't be afraid of certain things. As a man, you should be bold and fearless, and you should be able to just go out there and really make the most of your experience, your time here on this pebble. Me personally, I want to know what's beyond this pebble. I want to see what's in the stars. I want to see what's out there. I've always been interested in the idea of space and what's out there. Because there are answers out there to things. The answers out there for things that we find very hard to solve. The answers out there have simplified it in a way that it's too simple to understand, or very simple and easy to understand. So always be in search of greatness.